please take your seats. Please also remember to switch your electronic devices to silence. Welcome everybody. I'd also like to welcome those viewers at home who are watching the meeting via the live stream. If I could now ask if everyone could please be upstanding. Councillor Proud, if you could please read out the opening prayer. Thanks.
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions, to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask this in your name. Amen.
And Councillor Perkov, could I ask you please to read the Acknowledgement of Country?
Sure. On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, on which this meeting is taking place, and show our respect for elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you. You can all take your seats. Thanks. Without prior approval, any recording of the meeting is prohibited. No action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the city being received. Brings us to item 1, which is the official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the council meeting of the 30th of August 2022 open at 6:31 p.m. Item 2, attendance and apologies. I have nil. Item 4, disclosure of interest. Disclosures from the Planning and Development Committee meetings can be found in the agenda of tonight's meeting and are displayed on the screen behind me. For the council meeting, Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Stephen Rodich, disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.1 DS2 as a planning consultant for the applicant previously worked for the city's development services team and is known to him and other planning staff involved in planning assessment. This interest has no impact upon the officer's assessment of the proposal and subsequent planning report. Are there any disclosures, councillors? Councillor Thornton?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have an impartial interest on item 12.1 DS2 as I reside, or I don't reside, I own property in the Herdsman-Glendalough precinct.
Thank you, councillor. If you can make sure the paperwork, I think that might carry over from the... Yeah, it's already there. Councillor Hatton?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have a declaration of interest on 12.1 DS2. I know the resident who gave a deputation last week, known to me.
Thank you, councillor.
Thank you.
And I've received one on item 14.1, floodlighting Mount Lawley Tennis Club, and impartial from both Councillor David Lagan and Councillor Bianca Sandri, as they are the patron and sub-patron of the club. Thank you. That's done. Councillor Ferrante.
Mr Mayor, just a quick guidance question in regards to the motion I put forward in relation to rebates or incentives for rates. Do we need to put a financial down because we're all ratepayers, or what's the...
No, that's okay. An interesting comment, I think. Yeah, specifically excluded. Nice one, councillor. You can't win the car though. Are there any other disclosures, councillors? If not, I'll move to item... Sorry, Councillor Reid, disclosure.
My apologies that I was late to start with. Secondly, with regard to item 12.1 DS2, I note that that particular item, the proponent has elected to go to council rather than the DAP. As a DAP member, I'm just seeking clarification whether or not I should do an impartial interest, please.
I couldn't imagine that you would have to, seeing as it's being determined by council, but I will get Mr Blanchard to provide comments.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, you do not need to make a disclosure in those circumstances.
It's almost like I'm a lawyer, isn't it? That's good. Almost. That brings us to item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken... Oh, sorry, petitions. Item 5. Councillors, are there any unverified petitions you'd like to present this evening? No indication, councillors. So item 6, responses to the previous questions from members of the public taken on notice, and those responses from the last council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting. Item 7, public question time. We do have some questions for tonight's meeting. So I will start by asking Michael Jorgensen if you'd like to come forward. As you do, if you press the button on the bottom right-hand corner of the microphone, and just your name and suburb to start, and then your question, sir.
Yeah, my name's Michael Jorgensen. I live at 24 War Street in North Perth. Excuse me. Thank you very much for allowing me to ask questions tonight. I represent Brown Falconer, and I represent and asking questions on item 12.1 DS1 related to Perth College. I have submitted the questions earlier, and I believe they should have been distributed, and I apologise in advance for the way the first one reads. It was not intended to sound like that when I reread it, but I will read it out and probably just paraphrase it slightly. But can the council please advise or clarify if it's considered reasonable to have a screened balcony that is below the level of the primary outdoor living spaces of the neighbouring property for which they are intended to screen, set back over 15 metres from the boundary and upward of 30 from that primary outdoor living space?
Thank you.
Would you like me to ask all three? Or
No, just that. First, let's do one at a time. Ms. Shears.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for your question, Mr Jorgensen. The proposed addition does comprise of 2 balconies. Through the city's assessment, they identified that, yes, although there is a bit of a distance between those balconies and the neighbouring property, it is considered, due to the natural ground levels between the sites, that there is a potential for some overlooking into that primary outdoor living space of the adjoining dwelling.
Thank you. Your next question.
Is the council aware that the requested screening is potentially asking the school to screen view lines across portions of an adjacent property already owned by the school to the affected or proposed or potentially affected land, and that the clarified extent of that proposed screening might be useful for the school?
Thank you. Ms. Shears.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, the city was concerned through the assessment that the sight line from those balconies may impact on the amenity of that adjoining owner. It is noticed that a condition of the city's recommendation was included on the committee agenda, and the committee decided to make some small changes to that condition, removing reference to the screen required to the south.
Thank you.
Fairly bluntly, could the council please consider removing condition E, or at the very least modifying it, please?
And thank you for that question, and certainly council will consider that item. It's on the agenda this evening, and they'll take into consideration your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler.
Good evening, Mayor, staff, councillors and members of the gallery. My questions, Mayor Owen, refer
Sorry, it's just your name and suburb to start.
Oh, Simon Wheeler, Scarborough.
Thank you.
My questions refer to the DAP approval on Thursday for the Karrinyup Regional Centre. At the DAP meeting, I noted that the city's refusal in its RAR and a DAP approval would occupy different realities. I said that they were from non-overlapping magisteria. What I meant to say was that if the city's RAR was from Mars or Venus, then an approval would be from Uranus.
Careful, Mr. Wheeler.
Uranus, third gas giant from the sun. Given the strength of the refusal by the city and the absolute dismissal of such by the DAP experts, it follows that either the DAP or the city's planning department does not understand the prevailing planning framework and logically must as such be incompetent. My question is, Mayor Owen, does the city think its planning department is incompetent?
No, it does not, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you. Nor do I.
Thanks.
The expert panel on Thursday accepted the proponent's impromptu allegation of a plot ratio of 0.32 on the site, in opposition to the proponent's own development report by an order of magnitude. The report presented to the DAP advertised a plot ratio of 3.7, down from 4.2 in the previous approval. And accepting a plot ratio of 0.32 is contrary not only to the calculations of the city and the proponent itself, but also to the method of calculating plot ratios as previously accepted by the DAP. And as Ms Shears noted at the meeting, that this is the method that the city has always utilised. They didn't try anything new. So my question is, Mayor Owen, can the Director comment further on this, specifically with regard to plot ratios, and also to if the city agrees with the DAP that they have the discretion to approve 24 storeys in lieu of 4 to 8, provided by the applicable planning framework?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Roddick?
Thanks, Mr Mayor and Mr Wheeler, for the question. As pointed out and by Ms Shears at the JDAP meeting, the city put forward how it calculated plot ratio. Look, I guess there may be a different view, and I'm not actually sure where the JDAP decided on which view to take in terms of plot ratio. I can tell you that the JDAP decided to use discretion in terms of approving development outside what was expected by the city officers under the Karrinyup Regional Guidelines in terms of building height.
Thank you.
Can I just provide a follow-up question to assist Mr Wheeler? And my recollection of the JDAP, it was an interesting point where the plot ratio changed completely during the deputation by the proponent, where they essentially assumed that the shopping centre didn't exist and it was just vacant land, and there was no one on that site and no use on that site to get the 0.03. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's how the applicant proposed it. The city did two calculations. That was one of the plot ratio across the whole development, including the commercial space, and we also did a plot ratio calculation for the area of land where this development sat on. So there's those two calculations in our planning report.
Thank you, Mr Wheeler.
Okay. But I note that the proponents changed during the meeting from 3.7 to 0.32, and that was accepted by the panel member, Leo Donoghue. Mayor Owen, after the previous approval at Karrinyup, residents requested in person and by petition for the city to procure external legal advice on the safety of the Metro in the North JDAP's decision making, to inquire if that panel exceeded its authority in, for instance, the spot rezoning of the Karrinyup Regional Centre. The city at that time declined. The city is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and I don't think it should be bullied quite that easily. And it has previously spent significant amounts of money, from $10,000 chasing outstanding rates that had already been paid in what was referred to as a test case, and some $100,000 running an unwinnable case against parking at Yellow Cafe, prior to later defending parking at Yellow Cafe. So I'll ask again, will the city take and publish legal advice on any points of law in regard to Thursday's decision that may present opportunities for the city or indeed the community to pursue a judicial review of this approval?
Thank you, Mr Wheeler. I can confirm that to date that hasn't been discussed, but I'll ask Mr Roddick to provide some comment for you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Mr Well, we haven't, I guess, considered whether or not we would seek legal advice in terms of the decision by the JDAP. Like I said last time, for the last decision, look, we reviewed the decision once the minutes came out. We're happy to do that again. We did seek advice last time. In regards to that decision, one thing that the city would not do would be to publish our legal advice if we did take that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Wheeler. Caitlin Marrison, please. Thank you. Just your name and suburb to start.
Caitlin Marrison, Osborne Park.
Thank you. And just your questions, please.
Oh, I can't remember them now. My question would be, what's going to be done about the overshadowing of the building and the effects that will have on the residents behind the building?
All right, so this is 12.1 DS2.
Correct.
That's right. Ms Shears?
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for your question, Ms Marrison. In relation to this particular site, the planning framework doesn't actually provide us any sort of real guidance in terms of overshadowing requirements. However, throughout the report, you'll note the officer's assessment talks generally around overshadowing and the setback of the upper floors of the apartment building.
And your next one?
What will be done about the traffic in the laneway? What will be done to manage the increased flow with the new building?
Thank you. Ms Hughes?
Through you, Mr Mayor, as part of the assessment of this application, it's referred to the city's internal traffic engineers. They've reviewed this proposal and consider it adequate to meet the demands, the laneway can meet the demands of this particular development. In addition, through the strategic planning that the city undertakes for areas such as this, they contemplate the capacity of the road network through that process. You will note that this proposal, should it be approved by council, is required to cede a portion of the laneway, and that laneway will then be widened over time.
Thank you. And your last question?
What will be done about the noise pollution both during the building process and after, with the balconies and the rooftop and the two restaurants at the bottom? I'm a shift worker, I work for the ambulance, so I really need it to be quiet during the day, which is why I bought the property.
Thank you. Ms Hughes?
Through you, Mr Mayor, should Council decide tonight to recommend approval, the City's officers have recommended a few conditions to deal with that particular issue. One is in relation to the construction of the development, so we do require a construction management plan be provided. That does include details around hours of construction and traffic and noise, for example. Not to say that that won't, completely provide you with a very quiet environment during the day. The other aspect is once the use is operational, there are conditions in there in relation to the acoustic requirements for the development. So they are required to comply with their required recommendations from their acoustic engineer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Noreen Cale, please. Thank you. If I can just get you to pull that microphone down as close as you can and just your name and suburb to start.
My name is Noreen Cale and I live at 55 Garner Lane, Osborne Park.
Thank you.
And my question is, are the councillors aware that all the conversation that took place last week and my concern about the traffic on Garner Lane is because this proposed new building is going to add 21 more vehicles into that laneway?
Yes, council are certainly aware that it's going to add the report talks about adding those extra vehicles into the laneway and talks about the increased traffic. Council will obviously take that into consideration in their determination this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marco Bracamonte, I hope I've pronounced that right. Just your name and suburb, please.
Yeah. Marco Bracamonte, Osborne Park. My first question is, how will the residents be compensated for the loss of natural lighting and the solar renewable energy?
Thank you. I'll get Ms Hughes to provide comments.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not sure exactly in relation to which development you're referring to.
Sorry, this same one.
Same one?
60 Main Street.
Yeah.
In terms of the city's assessment, as I mentioned earlier, there isn't actually any provisions or requirements in our planning framework around overshadowing. However, the city has been aware through the assessment the solar collectors on some adjoining properties. We did look at the solar collectors that are located along the laneway on that property adjacent there and believe that they still will receive some light during the summer months. Obviously, that will be impacted during the winter months, and the height of this proposal is compliant with what the planning framework is and envisaging for this area.
Thank you. Your next question, sir.
Have the developer will consider the height of the building? Because I actually live next to where this is planning to be built, and that's going to block a lot of light that comes through my house through the day.
Thank you. So, look, the developer has obviously considered what they want to build in their development application before council. Council will certainly take on board your concerns when they deliberate on this item this evening.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Roland Hadley.
Good evening, Roland Hadley, Woodlands. Who owns and maintains the Ewan Street East Road, which runs from Bower Street Corner to the traffic lights on Scarborough Beach Road? And is this part of the Ewan Street, or is this part of the Ewan Street Road gazetted by Main Road? Similarly, who owns and maintains the garden strip that lies adjacent to the Great Wall of Woodlands?
Mr Roddich.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Hadley, for the question. I believe that part of Ewan Street may be in private ownership still. I'll take that on notice and provide further detail to you.
Okay, thank you. Has the approval of the Ewan Street East Childcare Centre lapsed, and has there been any other approval made for this site?
Thank you. Mr Roddich.
Thanks for the question, Mr Hadley. No, it has not lapsed. The development was built, so the approval was implemented, so it definitely hasn't lapsed.
Okay, just on that same point, what is allowed to be constructed on this location?
Sorry. So I'm not sure what the question is. So there's a childcare centre on that site.
Yes, and if the area lapses, what else could be in place of that childcare centre?
Yeah. So what's the zoning? Are you asking what the zoning for that particular site is? Because there's no indication the childcare centre is going at the moment, my understanding.
Okay, fair enough. I'll leave that one alone.
Yeah.
Question 3. As a long-standing ratepayer, I can recollect that the amount of money spent on legal fees on a monthly basis was available. But for whatever reason now, I have not observed this expenditure detail anymore. Can you please advise on that?
Yeah, Ms Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Hadley. We wouldn't have provided legal expenditure available in the monthly reporting to Council before. We provide the high-level profit and loss, but it would be within the materials and contracts, other services, so the legal expenditure in detail wasn't provided previously. But happy to take that offline, and I can just check with you what you're thinking about.
And I can get Mr Blanchard just to provide you a quick update on the legal costs, if you'd like. Thanks, Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the last 4 years, our legal costs have reduced in the order of 2/3. And on an annual basis, the city spends approximately $600,000 and has done for the last 3 years.
And happy to provide you some breakdown on that, Mr Hadley and Ron.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. I will just rule to extend question time. We've just exceeded the time. We've just got one question that's left, so I'll ask Peter Gilchrist if you'd like to come forward. Thank you, and just your name and suburb, thanks.
Yeah, Peter Gilchrist.
Or club, if you want.
Peter Gilchrist. I'm the president of the Mount Lawley Tennis Club. Is the council aware that Mount Lawley Tennis Club has applied for club lighting upgrades on 2 occasions, and that this budget consideration on agenda for lighting upgrades is really important for the future of the club?
I'm sure they do, and that item is on the agenda this evening and will be considered by council, Mr Gilchrist.
Okay, and my second one is council aware that Mount Lawley Tennis Club is listed for major events in conjunction with Tennis West, and that improved lighting will greatly assist event completion?
Thank you, Mr Gilchrist, and that does form part of the report, so I'm sure councillors have read that and do understand that.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Members of the gallery, that's all I've got on here, unless I've missed anyone. So, thank you, sir. So that brings to the end of public question time. I'll go on to item 8, which is application for leave of absence. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? No indication. I'll go to item 9, which is confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I have a mover and a seconder for the ordinary meeting of council held on the 16th of August 2022? Moved Councillor Migdale, seconded Deputy Mayor Proud, and I'll just put that to the vote. Thanks, councillors. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Announcements by the presiding member. I have nil. Unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. Brings us to reports and recommendations of committee. And we'll now go on to the Planning and Development Committee items. Any alt recs provided to governance prior to midday today have been included in your running sheet, councillors. Item 12.1 DS2 is required to be pulled out as the Planning and Development Committee did not form a recommendation to council on that one, noting that Councillor Thornton has an alternative recommendation. Councillors, are there any other items you wish to pull out this evening from the Planning and Development? Councillor Ree?
Yes, please. May I have 12.1 DS3, please, on page 219? And may I pull 12.1 CF3 on page 259 for a question, please?
Thank you. Yes, you can. And thank you. And just before we move on to those planning, I've received also a disclosure from Councillor Hatton on 12.1 DS2 on the multiple dwellings. As I think it's already been done. Yep, it's already been done. It's been read out. Sorry, everyone. So we have the first one, 12.1 DS2. Councillor Migdale, you're chair of the committee, noting that there's no committee resolution for this one. What would you like to do?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to hand over to Councillor Thornton, please, for an alt rec.
Councillor Thornton, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I have an alt-rec. Shall I read the whole alt-rec out?
Yes,
or-
please. I
Okay.
think so. Yep.
Right, so that pursuant to clause 62 part 2, 68 part 2 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, the application for a mixed-use development of 21 multiple dwellings and 2 commercial tenancies at lot 396, house number 60, Main Street, Osborne Park, be refused for the following reasons. A, the development does not satisfy clause 62(2) Part M of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, as the height, bulk and scale of the development is not compatible with its setting or the desired future character of the locality. Part B, the development does not satisfy clause 67 Part 2N of the Local Planning Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, as the height, bulk and scale of the development will have a significant impact on the amenity of the adjoining properties and locality. Part C, the development is inconsistent with the design, intent, objectives and acceptable development criteria of the Herdsman-Glendalough Local Development Plan, specifically in relation to side setbacks and the rear right-of-way setback. Part D, the nil setback to the southern boundary has significant impact on the amenity of the adjoining property in terms of overshadowing and building bulk. E, the reduced side setbacks do not allow sufficient space for on-site landscaping, open space, light and ventilation. Last part, F, the reduced setback of the basement and... Sorry? E, sorry. E.
No, you're right. You've got the right one. We've got an extra C on the screen, that's why.
F, the reduced setback of the basement and ground floor to Garner Lane does not allow for landscaping and advanced trees.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Migdale, is there anyone opposed to that motion? Sure. Would you like to test those?
Sure. Thank you. Just with terms of, and I apologise to Councillor Thornton because she gave me the opportunity to review this today, so thank you. Just in terms of A and B, I'm just a bit mindful, and obviously, you know, should this go to the tribunal, but the words, the height, in A and B, because as far as I'm aware, the height is consistent with the LDP, and really the issue is around bulk and scale around the boundary walls. So maybe we want to take. I'm just asking.
Yeah, Mr. Rodich, can you provide some assistance here?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Sandry, you're correct in terms of the LDP. Under the acceptable development criteria, you can have 5 stories. Where this development seeks variation against the LDPs in terms of the setbacks to the side boundaries and the right-of-way largely, and they could be best described as being in terms of bulk and scale.
So let's just, so can we get clarification? Is there a problem leaving it in, or would it be better bringing it out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, look, if council are concerned with the height, they could say that, but as Councillor Sandry has pointed out, and I've just made comment then, because it meets the acceptable criteria, it might be challengeable in a review under the tribunal. So, in terms of the discretion's in relation to bulk and scale, not height.
So, Councillor Thornton, it's over to you. You can make a decision on this. If you want to leave it in, you can leave it in. If you want to take it out, you can take it out.
Yes, I'm happy to accept Councillor Sandry's amendment. I think it makes sense, and she's...
Councillor Migdale, are you happy to accept that as well? Because that just forms part of the substantive. Was that another one?
No, that's fine. Can I just ask for E to, the last one, is it, oh, it's F. Can I just ask for that to be put separately?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, is there anyone opposed to this amended motion? If not, I will put it, noting that F will be put separately. I think we can still put A to E on block. Move Councillor Thornton and seconded Councillor Migdale. If everyone's happy with that, yeah. So I will put that, noting that F will be put separately shortly. And I think we're just missing Councillor Proud. That's it, and that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I will now go to item F of this motion, which is regarding the setbacks. Does not allow for landscaping and advanced trees, and we'll put this one. Thank you. And that motion is carried with Councillor Sandry voting against, all other councillors voting for. Thank you, councillors. So members of the gallery, obviously there's a bit of interest in this one, so that item has been refused. The development has been refused. I will now go on to item 12.1 DS3, the rights of way naming in the Osborne ward, noting Councillor Reyes pulled that out. Councillor Migdale.
Happy to move committee's recommendation for this item, please.
Thank you. And is there a seconder? Councillor Thornton. Councillor Ree, have you just got a question or are you opposed? If it's a simple question, let's get it done. It's simple naming of a laneway. Or would you like to debate it? I'm just trying to clarify. Yes, I've asked you if you'd like to ask a question.
My question is, I believe under our strategy that we wrote about how we name rights of way and that we were coming back to local areas, which we've talked about a lot around the table, especially with Scarborough and Doubleview with the right of ways. And it was about making it, there was an issue a couple of years ago where we had, I think, flowers or something, anyway, something strange, we would go back and make it about people, the people in the area, so that we respect the people. So I don't understand how we would have things about rocks and balls when we have people. There are so many really good people out there, Aboriginal, wherever, Italians, whatever. We have some really good people out there. Why are we did say we'd go for people. So why are we not going for people and we're going for rocks? Because some people don't want to be living in a street called a rock. When we've got a really good person down the road that it should be
I would
named
almost rule that question irrelevant, Council. I don't recall this Council saying any direction on future naming of laneways. And when you have a nameway in the Osborne ward, which is predominantly in an area that has mineral names, for the two councillors to put forward these seems perfectly logical. And Mr. Rodich, I'll see if you can clarify that any further. But
through you, Mr. Mayor, and I was just going to say it's explained on page 220, Mr. Mayor, and you explained it very well.
Thanks. I think when there's a double view naming of a rights of way, you can find people. So if there's no one opposed to this, I will put this motion, move Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Thornton. Thank you, and that is unanimous on some fantastic suggestions of names, councillors. We'll now go to item 12.1 CF3, the Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendment. This is the omnibus amendments, and I'll go to the committee chair, Councillor Migdale. Would you like to move?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, happy to move the committee's recommendation.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has seconded that. Councillor Ree, you have a question, I think you said, on this one?
Yes, please. With regard to it being urban and changing, which I think is really a great idea and everything, does that mean that they actually could build along that strip? Because it does affect the people, because I thought the whole idea originally of the MRS amendment was to actually give it parkland greenery, but...
Mr. Henderson?
Yes, the idea is to zone it urban so it can be built and developed upon.
Councillor, you happy with that?
Not really, because it does conflict with a lot of people that actually wanted the greening corridor, and I thought under the Herdsman Glendalough plan, that was the idea, that we would keep the greening thing going. But if we're going to change the amendment, we're going to change the use of it, I would have thought that we wouldn't make it that they could build a whole lot of high-rise sitting on the freeway. And we're already, and I know I'm probably wrong with the stat, but I think we're about 34% less greenery in Aussie Park, one of the worst greenery places.
Sure. So as your question's been answered, though. So do you want to debate it, or you?
Wondered whether or not we can actually say something like that, that in accordance with our town planning scheme and what we wanted to do in that area and our structure plan, whether or not we can say that we don't want to have it totally built with buildings, concrete, that we keep the greening element.
Mr. Henderson, can you provide some further clarification?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The ability to build and develop along that strip of land is consistent with the structure plan.
So there's your answer. So I'll now ask if you'd like to oppose this or if you're just happy.
I don't have a problem. I think it's really important that going forward we need to do it. I think the report's good. I was just concerned that we don't have enough greenery.
Councillors,
and
it's
we
not
might
open.
debate
It's not
That's
open
all.
for debate yet. Yep. So it's been moved, Councillor Migdale, seconded, Councillor Proud. I will put that. Thank you, councillors, and that motion is carried with Councillor Farrelly voting against the omnibus amendments. What's that? It's unusual. I will now go to the balance of reports. Councillor Migdale, if you'd like to move the balance of reports.
Like to move the balance of reports, please.
Thank you. And the Deputy Mayor is seconding that. I will put the balance of reports, councillors. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Members of the gallery and those at home, please be advised the remainder of the Planning and Development Committee recommendations have all been adopted by Council by exception resolution. We shall now move on to the Director Council items, starting with 13.1. The 2023 Committee and Council meeting schedule. I believe, Councillor Sargent, you've been controversial here.
Well, we'll see how controversial. I'm testing the waters. How's that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So, would you like me to read the whole thing, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please. Yeah.
The Council endorsed the setting of the Committee and Council meeting dates for 2023 as detailed in Attachment 1 with the following amendment. A special council meeting held on the 24th of October 2023 is vacated and combined with the special council meeting to be held on the 31st of October 2023 to encompass both the swearing in of elected committees, elections of deputy mayor and appointments of committees. And then number 2 is the same as the report that we give notice. And then Councillor Proud asked for the addition of number 3. Which I would like to ask to be put separately, Mr. Mayor, that the council meeting commence at 7 p.m. With the exception of the Christmas one instead of 6:30. I can just give a brief clarity to what A is. So, councillors, if you know the election for next year will be on a Saturday, what I'm asking for is that first week not to have a council meeting, to have inductions and orientations for new councillors, and then the next Tuesday to do everything we would do on that one day. So that's pretty much clearing it up.
Sure. So, and just for clarification, I'll just start with that. I think I'm pretty
Okay.
We'll take that advice from the Manager of Governance, I think. But it's important here, so those councillors who are new, who may, well, not really new anymore, but it's such a blur during that process, what Councillor Sargent is trying to achieve is rather than coming straight in for the Tuesday and then sort of rushing through the process, is to have that week off and get more of an induction. And then the first meeting is generally just the swearing in of a couple of new councillors, perhaps, and then putting it all together on the next meeting. Mr. Blanchard, is this able to be done within the
Sorry,
Act?
point of order, Mr. Mayor. Do we have a seconder for this?
No, I'm just getting clarification from the Act first, so I'll get a seconder. Mr. Blanchard, is this able to be done with the Act?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The swearing of councillors must happen at the first council meeting after the election, or before a councillor acts in the role. If a special council meeting was needed in the week prior, due to the need for council to make a decision on something urgently, then we would obviously shift the swearing in to the start of that special council meeting.
There you go. Thank you. Councillor Migdale, you're seconding. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Sandry? Councillor Sandry is opposed, so I'll just open debate. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure there's a few, so let's I just want to give you the chance to talk if it's going to.
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. I pretty much said it when I was trying to read out the motion. Now, we've all been there, councillors. We've all had our first elections. We're elected into the City of Stirling. It's an exciting time, but it's also, then we have this realisation of a, oh my God moment, what have I got myself into? There's a lot going on in those first few months. So what I'm trying to establish in this motion is to just have that first week where we just calm down a sec. Let's have some orientation, let's have some inductions, let's go through processes properly to better explain and outline to new councillors that have just come on board that this is what you've got yourself into, this is what it's all about. Any councillors that have been around a while can help them through that process, and then because we've been around a while, when the first meeting comes along, we can do the swearing in and pick committees and whatnot on that time. So I'll hear the discussion in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Migdale, would you like to add?
I concur with everything that Councillor Sargent has said. It is a very frenetic time, and if we could just slow the pace down in that initial first week to better add to the experience of new councillors, I believe that it would set the pace and give them the opportunity to condense months' worth of learning into that initial first week so that they can hit the ground running sooner, knowing what they would know by the following week. And I'm getting plenty of nods from relatively new councillors who the experience is very fresh in their minds of coming on board. They can relate to that and understand the value of this. So I certainly do see the benefit. I cannot see any drawbacks. I would welcome anybody raising any drawbacks they can think of. With regards to point 3, I do believe that 7 o'clock would be more suitable, but I also understand and take on board that for certain councillors, depending on the day jobs, 6:30 may suit some people and 7 o'clock may suit others. I would probably consider it would be great to have a conversation around looking at potentially keeping 6:30 in winter and possibly 7 o'clock in the summer months. I don't know if that is palatable to other councillors.
You're probably the sort of councillor who votes for daylight saving, aren't you?
I like to sleep in.
No comment. No comment.
Continue.
The cows. Yeah, so I feel that that's probably part of another conversation. It suits me to come at 7, that way I can complete what I had to do during the day. It works for me. I don't mind if it finishes at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. There's not a great deal of difference in it for me. However, that might change. But as it is, I agree with points 1, 2 and 3 and hope you all support it.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra, you're opposed?
Yeah,
Well,
thank
sort
you. So I guess I'm just looking at the schedule. I understand where Councillor Sargent's coming from. It's probably, anyway. But I think as a newly elected councillor on council, you want to be sworn in as quick as possible. Like that's the one. This enables, on the 24th of October, enables those councillors to have a one-off evening about them and about swearing them in. And I accept that, amalgamating might be more efficient and things like that, but I think that we would be doing a disservice to those who have just gone through an election period, which can be arduous and hard. They get onto council, they wait a week and a bit, and then they're logged doing the swearing in on the same night that it's the deputy mayor and the other votes in terms of committees, which as we know can be quite contentious. So I think that having one night specifically for the swearing in of the councillors is more appropriate, and it makes it more memorable for those councillors as opposed to combining it on the 31st of October. I also don't think, having the meeting on the 24th of October will interfere with their inductions because, in fact, at least on the 24th of October, We get to meet everyone for the first time, face to face, as opposed to phone calls and things like that. And it actually brings everyone together, and you get that whole team atmosphere starting straight off. I understand the sentiment, I get it. However, I don't think that I can support it on that basis. In terms of the time, someone who works anyway, depending on what time of the day, I'll get here at 6:30 or 7. It doesn't really matter. It's really what people would prefer. For me, 6:30 is easier. It means I get an extra half hour sleep before the next day, but whatever.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Proud, would you like to speak to number 3? I'm aware I think you amended that with... Yeah.
Well, I can do. I was going to put it in separately, but there was one already there, so add it on. Look,
that's why I think it'd be good for you to explain it. Yeah.
My main thinking is, I don't know about everybody else in the room, but I would gather other elected members are similar to me. Tuesday would be their busiest day. If they work a 5-day week and they're going to bring it back to 4, they would have Tuesday off, because sometimes it can get awfully manic on that day with maybe contentious proposals, etc., and people lobbying you and you getting amendments or alternatives done that day and garnering officer being able to contact them on that day because everybody is frantically busy. So, especially that Councillor Migdale raised the good point, summer and winter. I actually hadn't thought of that. The longer the day is, the longer that you're doing things and seeing residents, and while it's still daylight and I can be still out meeting people on that Tuesday, if that's been an urgent thing to have to do that day, I try not to structure things in away from the computer that day, but there's quite often I'll get to council and I can flick through my emails on a Tuesday night, which I haven't done tonight, but there's probably, when I get home, I'll find a bunch of emails that from officers or whoever that I should have read, should have seen before I actually got here, because they added information. So, I don't know, I just find Tuesday horrendously busy, and I'm presuming that's for all of us. I don't think we'd be much different from each other. So it just gives us that extra half day. Look, starting a half hour early certainly doesn't guarantee finishing half an hour early. A meeting is a meeting. It depends on the items on the agenda. It depends on how much people have got to say, how much agreement or disagreement there is. So that's all it boils down to. It's actually up to council how often they talk and if they think about whether they need to speak if they're going to add value to each item. Those points can be brought back. That's very easy to do. So the time we finish is certainly up to council, and the time we start is, I guess, up to us at a point like this when we make a decision as to when should we start. Having said that, if it was changed or if it wasn't, if it didn't suit, I know there's some new councillors around the table that have never experienced the 7 o'clock start. They've started, as in Tony Kay has started at a 6:30. He's never experienced a 7. So he's in the gym, I know. He's already in the gym. However, it doesn't hurt to suck it and see, and if it works, it can easily be changed back in the following calendar of the next year's calendar. That's an easy thing to do. This isn't bedded in concrete. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just get clarification? The Tuesday, the 5th of December, is that with the intent that there's a... Why is it 5 o'clock on that one, if I can just clarify?
It's Christmas. So we do the meeting first, then we go to dinner. That's the Christmas show.
Yeah, I think... So, I know it's tradition, but I thought after the intent was we weren't going to do that again. The time. Yeah. So, no, so can I just seek some clarification from council before this one goes up? So the intent wasn't in the next cycle, from my discussions last time, to do that. And the reason is because it doesn't matter what time you start it, you end up trying to rush through decisions while people are waiting to have dinner with you, possibly at 9 o'clock at night. So the intent was to do a normal meeting and actually have the separate dinner on, say, a Friday night. So just to clarify that, I think that one we can leave off.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. That's
yeah,
fine.
you're happy with that? Thanks, Councillor. Thank you for saving that, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Migdale, are you happy with that? We've just taken that bit off. Sure. Now, I do have a few councillors. I've got Councillor Ferrante.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I would like to put item 3 separately.
That's been asked
technically,
of, yep.
Yeah, and also I'd like to foreshadow, because I'm a little bit overzealous in regards to start time, I'd rather start at 6:30 rather than 7, rather than sleeping in like everyone else does. So I'd rather be
Thanks.
here promptly and on time, Mr Mayor, so I'd like to separate that.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
We'll do 3 separately and foreshadow 6:30, which is the current status quo. I have Councillor Ree.
It used to be 7 o'clock, and that allowed people to come from work and from town, because when I started, nearly everybody else worked, and nearly everybody worked around the table. I think there was only about one person that didn't work. And to try to finish work in town and then drive in, sometimes you only just made it by 7. So I think it's good to go back to
I
7.
would say that's irrelevant in modern day.
Well,
No, I think it.
I didn't come in a horse and carriage here. I came in a car.
Yeah. The 60s were great, Councillor Ree. Continue. Yeah.
Exhausting. You're just exhausting. With regard to the council thing, I actually think that coming straight away, because you should be elected in the first council meeting, and that's traditional. And I know the Local Government Act says the next council meeting everyone must be sworn in. However, I do believe it does say that you've still got to have a mayor, a head of state, if you like, so want of a better word, in charge of the city. If nobody's been endorsed or nobody's sitting there and registered and sworn in, the city has actually got nobody as a head.
I'm quite comfortable that it's
don't
entirely
have
up
a
to
head?
council tonight whether it's that week or the week after. I think we'll be fine.
No. Anyway, the status quo. The other thing I'd like to say,
The manager of governance whispered it's completely wrong. So
do you want me to
so-
comment on that as well?
No, you don't need to.
Fine.
Again, we'll go with the manager of governance on this one.
On page 295, I see how you've got July, got like 4 weeks, and then you've got 2 weeks in September. Could I ask why there's 4 weeks in April? Because it takes over. It's a long time between meetings in April as well.
Sure. Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, April is difficult next year with the timing of Easter and Anzac Day and the school holidays. You'd be looking at a committee meeting and then a week off and then a council meeting, which we don't like to do. And so this is the proposal that we've put forward for April to preserve Anzac Day, which is on a Tuesday, and to preserve Easter school holidays.
Thank you.
I'm just concerned that, I think in the past, I'm going back to horse and carriage again, but, we only miss like a couple of Tuesdays in a whole year, really. We only really had, say, about 5 weeks off in the whole year. And looking at what happened this year, when we've got so many banks and not being here, we end up with thousands of pages of thousands, whether or not you have it electronically or hard copy or whatever, keeping people employed. Irrespective, we get big agendas because of it. So my concern is by stacking it this much, it's harder. And plus, one of the other problems is regard to DAPs and planning, which, as we see so many times, the developers say, well, we put this application in 100 days ago, and it's got to be in JDAP in 101 days, so therefore we've got to hurry up. Mind you, they've driven the staff mad going backwards and forwards, whatever they want. But councillors haven't seen it, the public haven't seen it.
But Councillor, I need you to get back on track. This is JDAP timing would be irrelevant to which cycle the committees and council meetings are in.
But this is what I mean. I think that's the problem, that if we don't have meetings in a row, then it puts that back, which puts a bigger burden on the staff and us.
So all I can do is provide advice.
Foreshadow the original motion of the staff, because I think that fits in better with what the intent is, and it's easier on staff. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're foreshadowing just the original officer's recommendation. All right, I think I've got that worked out. Okay, so we've got 2 foreshadowed, which is effectively removing 3 and the original officer's recommendation. All right, Councillor Lagan, I have you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just some quick comments. I wouldn't support 3. 6:30 for me is good. Gives you time to get here. We're not coming from Dumbleyung or somewhere. It doesn't take 2 hours to get here from the city.
Bit of order,
Councillor-
Mr Mayor. Some people work as school teachers. They finish at 3 o'clock. Other people finish 5
Councillor
or
Reid.
6. Slightly different.
Councillor Reid, I would suggest that... I would suggest there is no point of order there. And...
So you want teachers to work less than anyone else?
And for the live stream record, Councillor Reid's email address is on the website if you heard her say that teachers all finish at 3. Now, back to you, Councillor Lagan.
Primary school, not high school.
Yeah.
As high school
Councillor
people
Lagan,
finish
back
later.
to you.
He's gobsmacked, he doesn't know what to say.
I'm speechless. No, look, I also wanted to comment on number 1. I actually think what Councillor Sargent has done is it fits with us being within the new sort of speak of the Act, being fleet-footed and trying some new things out. I like the idea, and I'm not making any comment against any of the other speakers, but the fact is, once you're elected, you're elected. The swearing in doesn't change the fact you're elected. You're elected. You're basically doing business from day one when you get elected. The swearing in is a nice ceremony. It's nice to have your family. It's nice to have, but you're doing your business well before the swearing in. I like the idea of the combined appointment of Deputy Mayor and the committees. There has been some history around some byplay in that time frame between swearing in and committees, and I'm very pleased to see that we're looking at an option that might at least put a break on some of what is normal politics. It doesn't matter what level you're at, but this would be nice to try, and let's see how that plays out if we get this over the line. But as I said, number 3, I'd stick with 6:30 only.
Thank you. I have still got some other councillors, remembering that I'm asking as we head through this on such a simple item that we consider debate. Councillor Hatton.
Point taken, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, I do support Councillor Sargent's proposal in number 1A. I think that it is very good that we maybe combine them. Having been in those situations a number of times as a new representative in government levels, it is very overwhelming. You sort of land in a place you haven't got the feel of it. You don't know the geography of it, whether it be a higher institution or here. You don't know people. The easing in is a little bit daunting. I think that little buffer would be very good. Plus, if I remember rightly, at another level of government, that is state, there was quite a bit of induction before you were sworn in. And that again gave you the chance to get the feel and the smell and everything that goes around it. So I do support 1A. I do actually acknowledge Councillor Sandry's comments on that. But I do feel that 1A would be better. With the timing on number 3, I feel that would be better going back to 7. We do have every second Tuesday we have committee meetings that start early. When we have the bag coming a bit earlier now, which is good, we have the bag on Thursday or Friday. The memo, digital, whatever.
Yes. Well corrected, councillors. That was changed last week.
Well corrected. And you know, if you're working full time, I know teachers work full time. Some councillors don't believe we do.
Just for clarification,
whether we're on site or not.
Councillor Hatton, just for clarification, what time do you finish work as a teacher?
Finish work officially at say 3:30 officially, but normally not away till 4:30.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then you've got homework, of course, and they start quite early too. 7 o'clock, you see teachers at school quite often. Look, putting that aside, so it's pretty hefty time between the Thursday, Friday memo. And then trying to be at council early on Tuesday. After work on a Monday, you're trying to really digest everything again. So every Tuesday we have meetings. We have the early ones on committee every Tuesday or second Tuesday. It would be really good to just have that little bit more time. And another point is that when you're pretty committed to working full time, you need those periods, if you can, to see some people in the public, your constituents, so to speak. And if you can race around and spend an hour with or without an officer on site before 6:30, great. You can be here by 7. I just find 7 a far better and more reasonable time. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I've still got Councillor Kristovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've been listening to the debate very carefully, and I have to say that I agree with Councillor Sandry's approach to this particular issue. And in terms of pushing the swearing, well, first I want to ask a question, because I heard a reference saying that it doesn't actually make a difference. It's just a formality in terms of getting sworn in. Can I just get some answers as to whether it is just a formality and doesn't make any difference?
Thanks, Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A councillor is required to complete their declaration before they act in their role. So before a councillor participates in a council meeting, they must do the declaration. It does not need to be at a council meeting. It can be done outside the council meeting, but it needs to be done before they come and sit in the chair and try to vote.
And I suppose what I will say is that, when you, obviously for councillors that have been elected multiple times, it's probably a slightly different experience than to those that get elected the first time. But I think that having a separate swearing-in ceremony, like I said, where you get to absorb that particular moment in time, and also the fact that, it's not really taking away from the time that you've got to learn the job between that swearing-in ceremony and the next meeting, because you're really just coming to the council meeting, you're getting sworn in, you've got your family here, you're going through that experience and you're absorbing it, and it gives you a bit more of a opportunity to appreciate what's ahead of you, but it also then gives you an extra week or so to try and understand the committee structures and how it all works and where it all fits into the scheme of things. And so I think that the current system for me as an experience worked very well, and I was very happy with it. In terms of the commencement time, I've got no issues. I think 7 p.m. would probably suit me better as well, because it means I can do a few more things during the course of the day. But yeah, so it suits me fine.
Thanks, councillors, and I'm going to close debate on that and go to Councillor Sargent to close. Yep. But Councillor Sargent, come on, this is getting silly. Councillor Sargent, everyone gets a vote.
Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors, for everyone having a bit of a say on their points of views. Like I said when I first stood up, I was just testing the waters on this one to see what the views of councillors in the room. When I thought about putting this up, I thought about my time on council, and I thought about the first week I got elected and on council, I didn't know anyone in the room from a bar of soap. And I would have appreciated, and then everyone became my best friend. That's the politics for you.
That's because you're very likeable, Councillor.
Oh, apparently so.
Still your best friend.
But I would have appreciated that week to, as Councillor Middale said, to take a step back and calm down and soak it in and realise what's going on and what's what basically. That my view is that first week is exactly what Councillor Kristovich was getting at. To talk about the committee processes, to talk about what's ahead of you as a councillor, and not because a lot of this job is very hands-on. A lot of this job is on-the-job experience. But if we can slow it all down and have that first week where you can be less on the job and more, look, here's what to expect from you, this is good. Now, I just want to touch on, just before I finish, Mr. Mayor, the specialty of the event. So it doesn't matter when you're going to get sworn in, it's going to be special no matter what. Your family are going to attend no matter what. Having those few extra things like committee appointments on that night, to me, doesn't denounce the specialty of that day. I would assume the city will probably still put on a dinner for the people that come up. I would assume they will still do all that. So the day is still going to be relatively special. All this motion is putting forward is to help prepare the newly elected councils by having a week's break to prepare them for what's coming. So let's test the waters, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. So with that closes the debate. How I'm going to deal with this is, councillors, thanks. I'm going to put item 1 and 2 first, which is moved by Councillor Sargent, seconded Councillor Migdal, noting that Councillor Ree has foreshadowed the officer's recommendation. which doesn't have a change. So I'll put that one first. So ignore number 3, just number 1 and 2. Everyone clear? Yep. It's up to you what you vote, but this is for a change. If you're voting for a change. Can we have that off, the votes off so we can see? Well, that's a motion, yeah. So you're voting to either support Councillor Sargent's motion or you're voting against. So we're missing someone. So that motion is...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. The vote was in and...
No, there's no point of order. The vote was not in. Councillors, I've got the vote in front of me. When it was called, there was 14 votes on the table. I don't know. I know that I had 14 on the votes and then another vote came in. Guys, it's all above board. The vote was lost. Thank you. There's a foreshadowed motion, which is the officer's recommendation. I suggest, in the interests of brevity, yeah, let's just make sure the committee meeting dates. I think there was... Okay, so you'd like to deal with number 3 first? Okay, so, councillors, can we just stop talking so everyone can hear what's happening? Because I'm a bit confused too. So we're going to, rather than deal with the foreshadowed on item 1, that motion is lost, we're going to go straight to council meetings and deal with this one. So this one is that council meetings commence at 7. So you'll be voting for that, noticing that there's a foreshadowed motion that they stay as a status quo. I can't even remember who that was. Now, Councillor Ferranti. Thanks, sorry. My scribbles have become confused. So councillors, if you'd like meetings to be changed from the status quo to 7 o'clock, you are voting for. If you'd like them to be status quo at 6:30, you vote against. Are we clear? That motion is lost. So we'll now go to the foreshadowed motions. There. So councillors, we're just cleaning this up because the foreshadowed, there's 2 different foreshadowed, but they're effectively the officer's recommendation. We just have to change, I think there was, in the attachment, there was a time that was different.
December is 5 o'clock, so if you want that to be normal, we need to change that.
Yeah. All right, so the slight change there is just to reflect that we changed that December meeting so that all council meetings will change at 6:30 p.m. So we had 2 foreshadows, but we might just get a mover in a second. This has been written up differently. So let's get Councillor Ferrante and Councillor Reid to move in second because they were the 2 foreshadows, if they're happy with that. Yeah, so we're just putting, and we're going to do them all at once, councillors. Councillors, can we just have your attention just for this bit? So we're just going to do them all as one. So it's effectively the original recommendation, so as in the attachment, with all council meetings starting at 6:30. So I'll now put that to the vote, councillors. All right, so that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. All right. I'll now go on to item 14.1, proposed notice of motion, Councillor Lagan. Councillor, your motion.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move the notice of motion, and as we saw tonight, the club's very responsive and has been working hard over a number of years for this.
And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sandri. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? I don't think you can call favouritism when it's in the Mount Lawley ward, councillor. Sorry, Inglewood ward. Yeah. Mount Lawley test. Yeah, very confusing. Can we have the votes up? Have we got? Councillors, if you can go to the vote, please. That is unanimous. Councillors, let's hold it together. Item 14.2, proposed notice of motion. Councillor Ferrante, is there a mover of a motion?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the motion as recommended and just to have a question around that.
I've got a question.
Sure. Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Migdale. And thank you. Is that his questions? Yes. Yep. All right. Can I just have a show of hands? Who's got questions? Are they simple questions, or is this going to open debate? Okay. Councillor Ferrante.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, all I want to add, and the question would be to the officers in regards to the report when we get to the CRC meeting, that they look at, and I'm preempting Councillor Sargent here, of some costings around what we used to have, how effective it was, and some clarity around that, and also incentives, whether you get a discount for paying early, all those types of things that we used to have. And the reason for this motion was because there is a number of public that have asked, are they coming back, or people...
Doesn't sound like a question.
Okay, I won't have anything further.
Can I just get clarification? Because this came up during the last rates information that went out, and it was around the media that some councils were quite clever in purporting that there was discounts. My understanding is you can't discount, it's just they don't actually pay interest. Is it? Can I just get clarification that you can't discount your rates?
Through the Mayor, yes, we don't offer a discount on rates. Yes, if you pay in full, you would have no interest payments or instalment payments. The only discount, if you like, would be the senior or the pensioner in terms of the concessions that they would apply. And just to Councillor Ferrante, absolutely, Councillor Ferrante will include all those options in the report.
Mr Mayor, when you used to put them in 21 days
thank
before,
you, and I've
did get a discount.
I think... No.
Just a quick question. Is there a possibility as part of the prizes to consider like an electric car or electric scooters or something a bit more sustainability minded? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Sargent, was it?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, as seconded to the motion.
Councillor Sargent, as a question. We're debating. No, I didn't. He asked a question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Ferrante, for preempting my question. Yes, we've actually gone a couple of years without the incentives. Now, the whole point of an incentive is to allow...
Councillor, I was really clear.
No. To allow ratepayers to pay early, right? Pay sooner rather than later. I'd like to see that within the report, the difference between how it was before and how it is now. And
everything will be included, councillors.
Yeah.
Everything will be included. I will now put that motion, move Councillor Ferrante and seconded Councillor Migdale, seeing as no one is opposed. Councillors, can we just have a bit of order? Thanks. Councillor, now we're moving on to proposed notices of motion. Councillor Farrelly, I believe you have a notice of motion you'd like to raise.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, if it can go on the board somewhere, that the City implement a digital search criteria for all council motions by the end of November 2022 to replace the current non-workable database. The renewed database must enable elected members to access all motions within the council minutes easily, so that one can easily access whether the City Council has either accepted or rejected the motions. Details should include all matters pertaining to the agenda topic as per council minutes, which would include date of motions, detailed discussion and voting outcome. The reason for the motion is that the current database does not support a transparency in referencing items. Currently, it excludes the date of the motions, contains just the heading of the motion, excludes all discussion and voting things on the motion. So it doesn't support councillors following up previous motions or other matters, such as detail on issues and recommendations.
Thank you, councillor.
The reason I have put that is I've been trying
Councillor,
to...
you've got a reason here. It's just, it'll come back. So
Oh,
you're
okay,
just reading
yeah,
it.
okay.
No debate on it. Are there any other councillors who'd like to put a
Mr.
notice
Mayor?
of motion?
Is that for a report? Because it doesn't say for a report.
Oh, my apologies.
We can sort that out, councillor.
Yeah.
Yep. It will be a report, but the councillor's just,
Yeah.
just reading out a
Because it's a
proposed notice of
cost
motion. So I'll go through a normal process of
Yeah.
getting checked. Councillor Ree, you've got a motion? Would you like, have you got it with you? If you could just read it out? Yep.
Sorry, I've got it. A change in local government election process. The alternative method of changing the undertaking of local government elections by the City of Stirling be presented in a report to the Council October Community Resource meeting outlining the costs and benefits of remaining with the same system and the same for a change to the state and federal government process of only issuing postal vote ballot papers by request. Otherwise, voters need to attend voting outlets up to 3 weeks prior to and including election day. The reason for this motion is the cost of postal votes. Cost of postal vote is becoming a huge impact on our budget. The total postal option as an election voting method became available around 2003 in WA, and it was considered an option to increase voting percentage, which has only been achieved marginally over nearly 20 years of its inception. Due to the issues that have increased over the years with regard to postal papers disappearing from letterboxes, research has shown now that people are more likely to vote if they have to go and vote at a premises than take a postal vote ballot paper and post it. 25 local government councils in 2021 local government elections used face-to-face vote in line with the state and federal election process. 2 other councils have used face-to-face method for extraordinary elections in 2022.
Thank you. Okay. Councillors, are there any other notice of motions you'd like to place? No, thank you. Brings us to item 15, questions by members, of which due notice has been given. I have nil. 16, new business of an urgent nature, nil. And matters behind closed doors, I have nil. That brings to item 18, which is closure of the meeting. I declare the meeting closed at 7:48 p.m. Thank you, councillors. And good night to those viewers at home.